Hey everybody, that is one of my otocinclus in my quarantine tank, and you can see it's in there doing its job cleaning up SpongeBob's house. I saw 3 of them the other day out and about at the same time, so out of that last batch I bought of 5, 3 of them had survived. Now today I'm only seeing this one out, but they're very small fish and there's plenty of places to hide in this tank. What actually drew my attention to this tank was my new Kuhli Loaches. I bought 4 of them, and yet since yesterday afternoon I've only been able to see these 2, and they've been doing the Kuhli Loach thing. When I had the other ones in the tank, they did the same sort of thing, this swirling up and down and around in circles. They did it at this end of the tank, they did it in the same corner. It's interesting. I don't know if it's because of the heaters in this corner or what. It's also that end of the glass is exposed to the open basement, whereas if we look at this end of the tank, it's just darkness because of the tank stand and everything next to it. So that might have something to do with why they want to go out that end of the tank as well. But while I've been wondering where the other 2 are, and again, they could be buried in the substrate, they could be underneath all this stuff. That big pile of grunge you see right there is what used to be a Marimo moss ball years ago, and has just grown to be all big and sloppy and gross. They're called moss balls, but that's actually a macroalgae. It's not moss, and actually it's algae. So that whole structure right there is like a cave, so they could be inside of that. Plenty of places to be hiding. And of course my Java moss is growing out of control here too. I'm going to get in there and trim that back pretty soon. So when I came in here and sat down and started looking around, you will notice that there are a lot of snails on the glass and on the back and on the sides. And that got me wondering about what a lot of people have said about these Kuhli Loaches. I've heard that all of the loaches that are sort of long and eel-like, the Kuhli Loaches, the weather loaches, the dojo loaches, I've always heard that they don't really do much in the way of eating snails. It's only the more botia style, or botia, however you pronounce that, like my clown loaches or my skunk loaches, my angelicus loaches. Those will devour snails. That's why I don't mind having a bunch of snails in a tank like this. Not only is it a quarantine tank, the snails help to keep it clean, but they also, anytime I need snails, I can just pick them out of here and throw them in any of my tanks, and they're a good food source. But for as many snails as you see in here, I swear there's less snails than were in here a few days ago. So I'm now going to start paying attention. I don't know if I'm going to do a count or if anybody else wants to try to count the amount of snails you can see in the tank right now. But just to get a good visual and get a good idea on the amount of snails you can see in the tank. And there's plenty of them on SpongeBob's house. You can see there's plenty of them in the moss that's growing. You can see them all through the moss. So there's a lot of snails in here. You know, make no mistake, you can just look along the front edge here and see lots of them. But I'm going to kind of keep my eye on that. They've got a couple of weeks to go here in the quarantine tank, so I'm going to feed them a little less and see what happens, and see if we don't see a dramatic reduction in snails over the next week or 2. And I'm getting distracted because now that I'm looking at my heater, does that look like a bubble in there just above the red light? Because if that's a bubble, that would sort of indicate that that heater is full of water. And they really should not be full of water. They should definitely be vacuum on the inside. Well, actually, I don't know. Honestly, I don't think they should be a vacuum either necessarily. But they should definitely not have water, put it that way. So I'm going to get on with it and pull that out of there and check and see if it is full of water. Because if it is, I need to get it out of there. But the first thing I'm going to do before I stick my hands in that water and before I touch that electrified piece of equipment, I'm going to unplug it. Always remember to do that if you think something's wrong with your heater or your filter, any kind of electronics you've got in water. Always unplug it before you go sticking your hand in there. So I'm going to go do that now. And there's your final last sort of look at a mental note of what this tank looks like, although it doesn't really give you a good idea of it. Anyway, make sure you subscribe. That way you won't miss any of the updates I got coming up on this tank or anything else. So thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.